That's the next steps. We're working through a challenging issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that can be helpful and quick when it comes up. Good ideas. It's very hard. I assume the city's really trying to get a lot of grants, which is possible, but
We have $8.1 million in grants for this project. $8.1 million.
it's great.
We'll need more.
Yeah. I wonder how much of this Inflation Reduction Act, the feds are really spending. As long as that's happening, it's always a good thing with grants. Yeah.
Yeah, so think about it. It'll never be less expensive than it is right now. Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? How are you? Good.
Send me a text.
Yay, budget. Yay, budget conversation.
All of that stuff is running.
Well done with budget conversations this year.
I got, are you guys all lined out then?
We'll adopt our budget next month.
Okay.
And then, help the fire districts adopt their, fire districts 1 and 5, adopt their budget in, this is September, right? November. So.
Yeah. Are you trying to get your approach project done this year? No. Yeah, just working on it.
Yeah, just trying to outline all the requirements. I'm not accustomed to, permitting inside the city. And so, hopefully, probably January, late January, we'll put it out for bid. So I'll probably just kind of for that.
I really don't think it, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Truly.
It's
Yeah.
really just a replacement. It's not an expansion.
Right.
So,
Right.
it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Concrete. Will there be reinforcement? Do you think?
I think we should, because our evidences are pretty heavy.
Sure.
And so the question is whether or not there's requirements for that. And I didn't really see any. But we were kind of all about building it beefy. So,
You know what's there now? I mean, it looks like it's in okay shape. So,
it's lifting.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I would imagine we'll probably do a reinforcement like we did inside the floor, inside the bay. And then the last, longer than I'll be there.
How thick is that side?
So,
Probably more than 6 inches.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I think 8 probably.
yeah.
So, and I imagine that we'll want to do something similar and then just kind of fix the way the curb goes there. Because coming off the apron onto the city sidewalk, it must meet ADA requirements, but I don't know.
On
because
each side.
Yeah, because it seems kind of steep-ish to me.
Yeah, so it might be. I didn't recall that it looked like it was formed, like mine, like it didn't look like there you decided, and I thought into it.
Right. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think typically what they're seeing now is things like little triangle fork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully, we'll get a contract with the we're trying to decide if we want to do the demolition and grading ourselves, so we can do that.
Yeah, yeah. the only one- let me get some. We, rocks to turn over.
Yep, yep.
You're here in person, Dave. Yay.
Oh, yes, I'm not in Wichita anymore.
Yeah.
Not in Kansas, Toto.
You know, I think that everyone, that's kind of great. I'm not.
Everybody, call the meeting to order.
Sorry.
Thanks everyone for being here. Let's dive right in.
Okay, budgets, here we go. So I will share my screen. Let's see. I want to. Which one? I'm not trying to. It's a mess. There we go.
Look away.
I know, right?
Don't judge me.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. So I'll start with the budget memo. At the end of last year, we approved a cost of living adjustment for employees for 2 years. And so it was 5% over 2 years. And that was to spread the inflation costs. This year, the CPI is coming in about 3%. So it's less than the 5%, but I think we're fine with that. So we'll stick with that. And then again, just put in projects and priorities funded as in the strategic plan, as we adopted in 2022 and then kind of reaffirmed in the spring of this year. Again, property tax includes a 1% increase. I generally don't add in any construction, new construction, because not everyone pays either, so it ends up washing out. Slight increase to sales tax and other tax revenue based on past year's receipts. When inflation goes up and costs go up, we see an increase to sales tax revenue. I added the increase of the police contract to 301. That's still being negotiated. I did again add in a full-time fire chief, and that pay would be similar to other supervisors that we have throughout the city. And so combined, it's $130,000 for salaries and benefits. And it doesn't include a cost share with Fire District 2 for this estimate. That can be discussed further at the special joint meeting on October 5th, and where it's only about fire. It does maintain $60,000 each for the fire department and Fire District 2 for the fire hall repair. And that again continues on trying to address some of the safety issues that came out of the strategic plan for the fire department. We don't have cost estimates for some of these. Overall expenses, though, do exceed revenues by almost $200,000. It can be absorbed in 24, but if that trend continues year over year, sort of with these long-term costs of the police contract and a full-time position, the fund may not be able to meet the financial policy requirements by 2026. It's not in the red yet, but it doesn't meet the 10% cash carryover requirement. For the street fund, it adds one full-time facilities maintenance worker to focus on the downtown and Rock Creek Drive landscaping maintenance. For 2023, we had budgeted for a full-time person, but being reimbursed part-time because they were working in Cascade Locks. So it was like we had a part-time person financially wise. That didn't necessarily work out, and we have more work than we have full-time work. And so it's just a matter of paying for it. So that position is currently in there. We also have Lakeview Road paving, which the current budget is 145, but the latest estimate was at more like 170. Like
I
you,
thought it was 140. Oh, and then it came back just a little bit
a
higher.
little bit higher.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit higher than 145. But that
but we were thinking
Yeah.
it was gonna be just over 100, and
Right.
so
it
Yeah.
keeps going up.
I don't know why.
But we don't think we're gonna be able to get it in with the weather window that's already shown up. And so the ending cash balance in that fund is $113,000 short from meeting the city policy. So it has a slight negative balance as well as not having that 10% cash carryover. For the capital improvement fund, we're transferring almost $190,000 to the First Street project, and it leaves an ending cash balance of $28,000 for future needs. We haven't been drawing on it as much. I think I have it slated for the First Street project for this year as well. We're still waiting to see what TIB comes in at for a grant, and then I'm also researching the potential to leverage some ARPA funds, but that would be in a larger ARPA policy as far as how the city wants to leverage those funds that we have remaining, which is about $300,000. First Street, again, we secured some secured and anticipated grant costs are included in that. So that leaves that $190,000 gap. Park Plaza, their estimated cost for the design included in that, and it's a transfer of tourism dollars for that fund. The tourism fund, those project costs will come in November. There's typically not a problem with that fund meeting balance requirements. For the water sewer fund, the proposed rate increases are 15% for both water and sewer. And that's just a placeholder for revenue projections. I'll have another meeting on Monday to talk with them about questions that they may have, as well as talking with them about some scenarios to run for the ordinance change that we talked about as well.
Talking with who?
Are the FCS rate study for the rate study.
Okay.
The water treatment plant, and so it's painting. There's yard just needs some graveling and some improvements. The water intake road and Rock Creek intake stairwell improvements, that estimated $160,000 for all of that. The long-term water supply improvements. So right now we're analyzing whether or not to put investment into the well or put investment into replacing our Rock Creek intake. So we're doing that analysis, and we currently have it estimated to start a project in the fall. And so $400,000 would come out of 2024, and then the remaining $375,000 would come out of 2025. And those are outlined. It's outlined in the water system plan, and we're losing parts and pieces slowly from Rock Creek intake. There's been an issue with draw, and we don't know where it's plugged, and it will cost we figured it'll cost us more to try to figure it out than it is to just replace it.
If we go in to try to figure it out, we might as well
Yeah.
fix it.
Place it at that
Yeah.
point, right.
We've tried to research it as much as we could for as
Outside, or-
without actually
Getting
digging
in
it
the
out.
water.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we have $150,000 for contractor and developer led sewer line extensions. And so that would be sort of what came upon us these past couple of years, where people wanted to develop. And so the city said, hey, if you're doing that much, can you do just this much more to get us to a good stopping point? And so that's just kind of, if opportunities arise, we have money for those. Because again, if we can partner on that, it is less expensive because we don't have to go through prevailing wage and our own other government funded processes.
Or charges.
All the things. Yeah. Yes. And then the big one is the transfer out to cover existing funding deficit for wastewater upgrades. So there's a gap between the funding that we have secured and the project that we have contracted. And right now it's about $1.3 million. And depending on change orders, it goes up. So that's what that is. And so then with all of that, the ending cash balance in the fund is about $207,000 short from meeting the policy for the cash carryover. And then for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades construction project, we have $4.6 million remaining. And then for the lift stations, we have $3.1 million remaining. The equipment services, there's I forgot about the other purchases. So in here, there's an increase in internal services fees of 10%, according to the resolution that we adopted for the fee schedule for that. It includes a shovel-ready designs for a new public workshop, and that is needed because all of that space that was at the wastewater treatment plant is now gone. And so we don't have enough space to park our things, as well as we have acquired a Vector truck, and it also helps to park our equipment inside of a secured building to keep it out of weather. And we don't have that right now for all of our equipment. And then purchasing one new truck, just part of our normal cycle. It also includes purchasing
Sweeper, loader.
super loader, and there's one other. But that it includes those purchases through a lease agreement versus just outright cash. And so then that the debt requirement is then included, or the debt payment is included now for I think 10 to 20 years, depending on which way we go for that. And even with that, the ending cash balance is $98,000 short for meeting policy. So the big question is how to tackle the deficits in the funds. And there's multiple directions that can be taken. The street fund, as I mentioned earlier, when we were going through the transportation improvement program, that's a long-term challenge. And so if we want to try to meet the projects that are outlined in the TIP, as well as what we have outlined in our strategic plan and everything that we're trying to go for, there needs to be either those plans need to change to reflect the funds, or the revenues need to be addressed in some way for that fund.
Not backhoe, dump truck.
Dump truck, okay. And if we increase the revenues for the equipment services fund to cover some of these other additional expenses, that also has an impact to those other three funds because it's a charge service based on hours used for the public works department. Anyone have any thoughts, questions?
Well, it's business 101. More coming in than is going out, or at least they need to match. So we have to do a quick review on what tools we have to increase revenue in the different funds.
Yeah, so I'll start with the street fund because that has a little bit more options than the others. For the street fund, we already allocate half of our sales tax to the street fund. So half of it goes to the general fund, the other half goes to the street fund. We can allocate more to the street fund through either the property taxes or sales tax. So we can just send it more money there. We can we can create a transportation benefit district. And what that would do is it would allow the city two additional options. One would be to do a tab fee, and I believe it can go up to $20. It used to go for vehicle tabs, right? I think it used to go up to 40, and I think they brought it down to 20. I can't remember what the cap is, but and then
And what was that for? What did you call it? Transportation?
transportation benefit district.
What does that mean?
That means the city council, in essence, creates another district that can be a taxing authority for the region, or a fee collection agency. I don't know if you have to like adjourn your council meetings and then start your transportation benefit district meetings. The elected body of council is the same as the elected body for the transportation benefit district.
And where is that money spent, citywide or?
No, that money is spent on the district and on streets, so it's streets only, but it is citywide. The other
Within the city.
within the city limits, right? And then through that transportation benefit district, you can also do a 1% sales tax. So those are some more options I can bring. I think in one of the memos for the street fund I had, or for the TIB or TIP, I had some more information regarding what revenues that could bring in, based on recent projections for either the tab fees or the sales tax. And I do believe White Salmon just did both for theirs to fund their street funds.
So that's anybody that has a Stevenson address would be assessed that $20.
inside city limits.
And you said you have a projection of that someplace, like what that would
I do,
mean?
yeah.
Whether that would
I just did a rough,
come close
think-
to filling in,
no.
bridging the gap.
no. The other one that
Would the 1% sales tax?
1% sales tax comes closer than the tab fees.
Right.
Yeah.
Which just makes sense.
Right.
Not as many people.
Right. And then the tab fee, if it's the sales tax as well, you then have other people that use the roads, tourists and recreators, that are then sharing in that cost versus
Well,
just
or
the
even
road.
Tourist
Tourists
Greater
over,
County.
I was gonna say, everybody going to the high school that's not a tourist or recreator, they're from Bonneville and Carson. They're using the roads. Still, so,
Right,
yeah.
right. But the sales tax is like if they buy things here.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
And these are voted on.
They are councilmanic. They can be voted on. But they can be decided by the elected body only. All to create the district, to charge the fees.
Not that this is an option. Based off of what you were saying, how much you'd bring in through either of those options, but in theory, say you did the tabs and you did the 1% tax. Could you then, if that was more than covered the deficit on the street fund, could you rebalance that division of funds that you're splitting between the general fund and the street fund to favor the general fund more to help close that other gap too?
Yes, that is an option. Another option that has been discussed as well is standing up the stormwater utility. We looked at it earlier. It's $26,000 of O&M costs roughly for that, and a lot more work to stand up that utility. So while you do save some expenses, it doesn't pencil.
That's O&M. So if
Right.
there's any additions that are needed, then where's that money come from?
So that's where I say it's more work, because the capital projects for a stormwater fund are not included in the budget right now. And so going forward, you may be able to share those costs. But in the short term, it's a lot more work and more effort than than the money that you're getting for it. Because we would need to do, in essence, create a stormwater plan to even get a picture about what we're talking about for infrastructure.
Somehow it seems like we don't need another project.
No. Not $26,000.
Just saying,
Right.
$26,000. Yeah. So, but that's one way to kind of shift expenses more or less. So that's the street fund. For the general fund, there are some short-term options as well. One option that the city hasn't exercised is you could charge a utility tax on your own utilities. Again, that's councilmanic. And all of these fixes I'm talking about short-term ones. There's a longer-term ones as well. But short-term one would be charging a utility tax on your water sewer fund and those utilities, but then it goes straight to the users.
Which would increase their monthly
Yes.
bill
Yes.
above the 15% you're already projecting.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the downfall.
Dave said he'd cover that for us.
I'm just providing options. I mean, the long-term option is you can go for a levy lid lift. And so I was looking earlier and I think we're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as a levy rate goes. You know, back in 2013, kind of like shortly after the crash, there were a lot of people that were maxed out at 3.6. We're at 1.55. So that's one option.
Showed up.
So the way that property taxes work, the city has a maximum rate to charge people of 3.6%
On
on their property taxes. The city isn't close to that. We're at 1.55 as a rate. The way property taxes work is every year we can increase our property tax that we collect by 1%. The rate, though, varies based on what the assessed value is of the community. So that's why when you have the economic crash and the crashing of assessed values, so when your property values go down, your rate goes up because you still need to cover, say, that $100,000. And so if your property value drops, you're charged more to still pay that, you know, your $2,000 bill. Your bill's still $2,000. And so that percentage fluctuates, but it's capped at 3.6%. Again, we're not close to that, so we don't have that issue. But if we were to go to the voters, we can raise that 1.55% to another rate. So we could raise it up to 2, we could raise it up to 3.6, whatever you think the voters would approve. I mean, that's the downfall, is you can't ask for the moon because people wouldn't approve it unless you have a good reason.
Can you utilize part of that for the sewer?
So yes, you can use general fund monies for anything. So we could use general fund monies to
Levy.
pay for sewer.
To do a levy lid?
A levy lid lift, yes. Mhm.
That's like a campaign, though. If you
It
don't
is.
throw
It
on
is.
the
That's why I
ballot.
said this is a long-term.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
But that's
right,
something
right.
that you don't just throw on the ballot and say. hopefully you
Right,
vote for this.
right.
Where you gotta,
Like running a campaign.
right.
Yes.
But that would be a
have town
way,
hall.
that would be a way to spread out the cost of the sewage work a little more equitably, because
Your
the $1
tax-
million house isn't just paying $150 in sewer, like the 20,000 or $200,000 house. 20,000. Show me a
I know.
$20,000 house.
Where are you?
I can show you one, but you aren't gonna like the looks of
Even
it.
nowadays with a $200,000 one.
Right, yeah.
It's got a bunch of blackberries.
Well, and I
So-
think part of that is everyone really appreciates the services the fire department provides. So I mean, if that's a general fund one, so
Right.
if you can say this is to fund this position for fire.
Right,
That's a,
yeah.
Right. No,
people
that,
like that.
And there could be more discussion to be had as well with regards to the fire department. You have regional fire authorities, you have being annexed in, although I think if we're annexed into the fire department, to fire district 2, we lose that percentage
You
for
lose
our
that
levy.
percentage. Yeah, you lose that percentage of this, of the property taxes.
So they have, so their rate is 0.77. So I think we lose 0.77
Yeah.
of our 1.55.
oh, wow.
I haven't done that. Right, exactly. So that's a bigger campaign
Mhm.
as well, because you would be like, I would see the city, because we don't spend that much on our fire department. So I could see if that were a campaign, it would be to vote for annexation into the fire district, as well as then voting
Or,
for an increase. So it is an increase overall. It's a bit of a shell game too.
Right.
So it's challenging to communicate all of that.
Those would be two separate votes.
Yes, right,
so you get
Right.
losing
Yeah.
out in a not good way.
right. Yes. So, again, all options. And then, yeah,
Well, it still comes down to increase revenue or sharpen your pencil or both.
mhm,
So that's,
right. The water sewer fund, that $207,000, may or may not be realized depending on how this year shakes out. So I think, so connections, sewer connections are down from what's projected. It's, I projected 56,000 for sewer connections and we're at 50,000. So we're one connection short. Water connections are above and beyond what was anticipated. So again, that goes to, there's a lot of people building and connecting, but they're on sewer. That's what that translates
They're
to.
on septic.
Sorry, septic. Thank you. Not on sewer. And I think the water fund may be bringing in more revenues, which would then translate into that combined fund having a different cash carryover balance and possibly funding that gap. But it's a gamble.
It's kind of like owning a business, a construction business, and you've got excavation equipment, and you've got a new construction and a remodel all in one big business. And in the winter time, all the equipment just sits there, but you got all these payments going out for it. So you got to do more remodels and new construction in order to pay the bills to keep the equipment.
And because we're so small, we're able to do that. I have thought about separating out the funds, but you lose some of that flexibility. And with what we have going on, I wasn't quite prepared to yank that out just yet. So yeah. And then the equipment services fund, again, I think that's just a matter of what assets do we want? I guess, do we want to move forward with all those assets? What's the impact of them? And what?
I mean, what assets do we want on an ER&R account and what we don't want? Basically,
Yes.
like the back truck, those types of things.
Mhm.
You want to have some kind of a replacement plan in place.
That's not even included in there yet.
Yeah, this is kind of the replacement plan for bigger items is if we get them all this year and pay them off over, the coming years, we spend less money repairing them. Right now, it's like every time we turn on the sweeper, we have to go and repair it. Backhoe's the same way. Every time you turn it on, you have to fix something or add something, or tweak something or hit it with a hammer. So the idea would be to take advantage of 2024 prices on this stuff, knowing that, you know, we're gonna have to pay off a loan, so we won't be able to pay for it with cash, but they're all, both a loader and a sweeper are expensive. I mean, those are $500,000 products. So I don't know that we'll ever have the cash really to be able to just buy them if we don't want to buy junk that we have to work on every time. So we'd like to get into a position where we can salvage them and actually make something on them a little bit. And we haven't been able to do that so far.
So we have, so again, over 2 years, we have $450,000 in asset purchases. So in the current budget, I have purchasing the F-250 and financing the remaining 350,000 roughly. Rather than trying to finance this year and the next year, and then I just threw it all together. So.
Makes sense, because as you, I mean, if you're gonna spread it out farther, it's gonna get more expensive anyway.
Mhm.
And you're gonna keep spending the money to fix the stuff that's not up to standard right now.
And really, it's not it's our time. Like, yeah,
Well,
that's the
which- I
most
mean,
expensive
but-
part.
Which adds,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it takes away from time you could be actually doing the jobs as well.
And while I'm sorry, date of purchase, I thought it was 2009. I'm like, while the sweeper seems young. Yeah, the sweeper, we need to wait for it to rain, or we need to have a fire truck go in front of us to wet the roads in order for the sweeper to work. So.
Or it's just dust because
Yeah.
the water on it is broken.
And that was purchased on a USDA loan that we paid off in 2017, I think. So,
Wow.
So the fire chief salary.
Yeah.
What would they do? Let's say that we hired one tomorrow. We don't have that big of a fire department. What are they gonna do for that money?
You were at the last meeting and all the things that we need to do to get our fire department up to snuff.
That's just like,
Tackle that list.
so that's it. You know, the strategic plan called out a lot of things and suggested that we hire someone to tackle them. And so that would be what they could do in addition to,
increasing volunteerism.
right, yeah.
Would we take our fire marshal services back from the county? If we had a fire chief? Or no? Different roles?
They're different roles.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do they have to be?
Okay, I'm gonna kick the dog in the hind end.
Mhm.
Why does the city of Stevenson proper need to have a fire department? Since we're already within Fire District 2.
We're not within Fire District 2. That's it. We're a different district. Fire District 2 surrounds the
But
city.
we
of
could
Stevenson.
annex into Fire District 2. And then you start that whole other conversation about regionalization.
Testify.
Yeah. Frankly, I don't see where the city can hire a full-time chief. Nor be able to walk up the street to somebody and say, well, here's why we need to hire a full-time chief. I don't like to walk around with a lot of egg on my face. I got some, and I got a big S for stupid on my forehead, but that's a tough nut to crack.
Kind of what I was trying to back into as well. I mean, if we're talking about.
I'm not afraid to say it.
$100,000, that is like a big chunk for a job. It's like, have we identified?
Well, weren't we talking about over $200,000 for the fire chief?
130,000 was salary and benefits for the fire chief.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
But if you look at other communities, even small communities, the salary for the fire chief is over $100,000. That's not, this salary range is between like 65 and 85. It's not that much. So even if we put that job out there, we don't know who will apply for it.
Sure.
Especially if they needed to move out here.
And I
But
would rather,
also-
well, go
Af-
ahead.
But also after they do get everything in order, what are they gonna do? You
Well,
know?
and that's the other thing, we've talked about, trying to figure out, how to combine a role, but it doesn't make sense for one person to do two very different things. Emergency management is something that may fit. But again, it's a very unique combination.
That's so much like a horse cart. Yeah, we need that, but do we need it now? But can we get to where we need it without it? I don't know. I'm confused or trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. You can't get to the point where you need a fire chief without having someone build up the fire department so that you need a fire. It all feels very circular.
Agreed.
How much money do we lose if we annex? Do we know what that is?
You mean as far as revenue,
Mhm.
Yeah.
if we annexed with Fire District 2,
0.77% of
Which is half.
350,
half of what we're doing now.
350.
It goes-
On the general fund?
We don't spend as much as 0.77% of our taxes on, we don't spend half our tax revenue on the fire department.
It goes to the other district. Or if we were to annex, we,
We're to annex, then that revenue doesn't come to the city anymore. It goes.
It would go
to
directly to
Fire
that Fire
District
District 2.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't know, the more we start talking about fire, the more I think we need to look further down the road and go towards regionalization. Are you for that?
Oh, big time.
So that
So-
conversation,
And I know that's a conversation for next week. But I mean, at some point, because
I don't think that helps their bottom line with budget though, if it is lost, if we do lose that revenue.
so
Which would be
based on this
next
year's rates, it's about $222,000. And I'm pulling up the budget.
We just don't spend that much.
no, but it just sits there basically in the reserve for fire, right? If we don't spend that 0.77, if we spend 0.23, where's the rest of the?
So we
money
spent,
go?
did we look at these numbers? Maybe not. $52,000 in 2022 and $65,000 year to date as of September 20th.
And we're bringing in how much?
Um,
Approximately
Well,
for this year
property taxes.
Yeah.
Our property taxes,
for fire.
it's, I don't have it broken out between fire or not. It's just our property taxes were $526,000 last year. And they're budgeted at $546,000 this year. We don't get the second half.
Okay,
for
so we're
later.
pulling the fire funds out of general fund dollars, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And so if
It's
we were to be annexed into Fire District 2, we would lose more revenue
Then what we pay.
than what we pay.
Going in the wrong direction.
There's also other support costs that we provide that's nominal as far as like processing AP. And as you see, there's a lot of Fire District 2 costs that are in there that like they can use a city credit card and it's easier for them to use it and then to buy Fire District 2 items and then we bill them on a quarterly basis. So. And as you can see, it's also nominal. It's like $9,000 last year, and so far it's $16,000 this year.
It's kind of like owning a toll bridge. You charge $3 to have a car come across, and you put $1.50 per car into the replacement repair of it, and the other $1.50 you use it to buy candy machines or whatever else.
Well, so with fire department being within the city fund, it's a little bit like the combined water sewer fund. Like you have the flexibility of funding things. So the fire
It's a
department,
funding source.
right? It's a funding source. So the fire department hasn't been requesting or demanding that much money. We're trying to set money aside for the fire hall. When we do move forward with replacing assets, the city has a much better position to leverage funds in the tax base to get either grants or loans
Yeah.
than a smaller district, because we can flex that property tax to pay for that.
Okay, so it feels like we
We also have $1
are
million in the reserves.
taking a long time on the little things. So there are some ideas for long-term revenue increase our revenues in a long-term fashion. Can help us with the incoming revenue. And there's a couple as opposed to just saying, now your sewer rate is going to be $250 instead of us trying to eke it out. So finding some ways to use existing revenue streams, tweak those a little bit within our power for a long-term revenue fix. There is a need for several short-term revenue fixes because we have some right now issues that we need to address by the end of the year to make some of those negative, ugly numbers go away. So what do we need to do to facilitate these long-term and short-term? And then obviously the discussion is what falls off because the honest losing a life. Like, are we going to have to hire a consultant to work on a levy lid?
Right.
Because that can't have, there's no way that city staff has the capacity to work that. Is that like when you get a committee together for the school tax? There's a committee that puts out the signs and puts up the ads, and if we need that to happen, then we need to facilitate success instead of just putting it out there.
And what's that gonna cost?
$1 million. I don't know. So that's what it feels like that we're talking about right here is we've got long-term ideas that we need to start seriously thinking about and then giving Liana some direction and yes, please, on the short term to cover these issues that are glaring.
And some of them, like the fire department, we'll talk at length about next week.
Right.
Gonna be an interesting
And I
discussion.
know that retired guys like to sit on committees. Let's talk regionalization. I'm keen.
Your team on that one?
I'm keen to be on a team. Yes, if that's what you, but yeah, no, I think that there's been some great success stories that was with some models that could absolutely work.
Mhm.
And of course, it does mean tackling some personalities head on.
Oh, boy. Yeah, you're gonna have some egos
How's
that
your
you're gonna
forehead?
have to deal with.
It's going to be some serious headbutting.
There's some serious headbutting that's gonna go on. But I think it can be done. I think if people quit saying me,
And that us.
and us.
Well, because it's been, okay, so maybe if you have several entities that have limited monies, but you put it all together and now everybody can service those in their area instead of trying to do it on their own. They shoulder that.
Yeah, and maybe in year one, you do this area. Next year, you do over here. Next year you go to this district and do it here. And so you've got a plan that's gonna encompass the entire region.
What if you have a regional plan that doesn't include a fire hall in every single district?
Well, there you go.
Or a big one in every.
Or a
single
big one,
district?
or a big one,
Maybe
yeah.
you just have something that's up at the top of the hill where you can put a brush tender.
Mhm. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but you gotta get people to buy into it.
Okay, so that was my soapbox moment.
Yep.
As
Rabbit,
far as what we're doing.
Squirrel.
That's what. What do you need from us today? What would you like city council to walk?
you
through
want,
your
you want our
thinking
gut
about?
reactions?
Well, I
This
guess,
is my gut reaction.
I guess. Do you want us to provide a list of things to take off? Do you want us to provide a list of revenues to bring in? What's the more palatable option? And how draconian do you want us to get if it's the cuts?
Well, and again, I'm willing to start talking about cuts.
Okay. Mhm.
And I can tell you the two that I would make right off the top, after having gone through this multiple years at the sheriff's office, would be the fire chief and the maintenance worker. I would pull those two off the table right now. Because, and the reason being is you're looking at about $130,000 just for that fire chief position. And how much are we out? Almost 200,000. So that brings us down to about 70. You are down street fund. We're 113,000 short. Full-time employee is looking at what? With benefits, 80,000,
yeah.
75, someplace in there.
Yeah.
So that drops that one down quite a bit.
Yeah, I feel like the list is kind of on here.
Right.
And what could be cut already.
Right.
Yep. So,
Do we feel really strongly about doing Lakeview?
but
Doing Lakeview still? I mean, I know we kind of promised that.
well, I think,
Maybe that'll come in.
and
at
maybe,
less than
and maybe we
145.
need to take a look at what we've projected out. Maybe we need to move some things around. I
Right.
mean, a plan is a plan. It's the guiding force for what we do. But at the same time, you can't be so fixed in it that, this is it, come hell or high water. I don't care if we're blowing bubbles. We're gonna do this. And right now, I feel like we're getting ready to start blowing bubbles.
Sorry, I was trying to pull up where we're at right now with sales tax. It's taking a little longer.
The stuff for sheriff's coming out of general as well. And you're
And
still
the sheriff's
in,
budget's a whole nother issue that I've still got
yeah.
some rubs with.
Well,
I can't in my mind, I can't walk to Rick Jessel and say, here's what we're gonna get for another $100,000 this year on our sheriff's contract.
well,
We haven't been given any information on that.
yeah.
They talks about the animal control budget. Animal control is part of the budget. They don't even have an animal control officer.
I don't know the truck. Or do they have a truck?
They don't even, I don't know if they even have a truck anymore. So there's those kinds of things that, you can come to the table and be asking for all kinds of money, but show me what you're given, because other than the normal things that you give to the people that are out there in the rural part of the county, that we're paying the same amount of money they are as a taxpayer, but yet they want, on top of the $175,000 contract, now they want another 100,000 on top of that for next year.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $90,000 of normal taxes, then 170-some thousand for the contract that's current, and another 100,000 for this next year, plus another 50,000 on top of that for the following year. Show me something for the money. That's where I'm at.
I am there with you.
There,
I
I
did
kicked
the
the dog
parallel,
again.
the parallel that they had, that I've been given is that, well, other towns are paying the higher amount.
What's their tax base?
I'm not saying it's a good argument. I'm saying
Yeah.
that was the,
That is one of
right?
the,
That's like the driving force behind it was a rate study of other places our similar size that are contracting as well, and they're contracting for higher. Well, cool.
and you look at the addendum to the contract, it talks about what the priorities are. One is mental health. You know, I don't, I don't want to get into it right now.
Yeah,
Well-
no,
It's,
And so whatever those numbers may or may not be, they're focusing on like a 2-year increase, like an increase that
150,000
year and
two-year.
then that year. Can we, if we have, I mean, that's what the general budget, and we're talking about longer term solutions to it. So if we agree on an amount that it gets increased over a period of time, maybe just bump it out to 3 years. Whatever that happens to be.
Anytime there's an increase in fees, it's just like what we're dealing with now. Increase your revenue or sharpen your pencil or both. There hasn't been a law enforcement increase in a year at least with. the
We've
transition.
we've been increasing it by the
Cool.
consumer price
Right,
index.
but
Yeah.
the cost to provide those services are going up.
but what
It's
are
more
those
expensive
services?
to buy an avocado at A&J than it was 2 years ago. So yes, I will feel it in my pocketbook. Finding a way to rationalize and say, why is this avocado $10 instead of $2? So I feel you, I hear you. But on the other hand, we also have to anticipate that there's going to be an increase. Show me why. Okay.
So I'm not off base. Okay. I thought maybe I was just getting
not by
old
this much.
and on medication or something.
Maybe this. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, not like this. I'm not.
Well, I like what you're saying, Dave.
I just kind of agree with it.
Oh, my gosh. But
You
yeah,
need more
I mean,
nuance on
looking
that.
at this, and I agree with you, Mayor, you know, when you go through this process. And I can remember, you know, the commissioner's come saying, you got to get rid of $500,000 out of your budget.
Good.
Yeah, right, okay. Well, and you start sharpening your pencil, you start taking a look at everything. And you start at zero and go up rather than, you know.
The trophy movie reference, go see the movie Dave, where he's an imposter. Kevin Kline plays an imposter. He's a president impersonator. Well, he finds himself sitting in the president's office and wants to preserve a program that means a lot to him. And they said, "We'll find the money." So then it does come down to evaluating priorities.
Absolutely.
Do we need all that money in that fund? We really like that fund, but what are we doing with that money? Couldn't we? So making sure that our priorities aren't all over the place and at loggerheads, making one or the other impossible. I really like having downtown looking great.
Mhm.
So I guess it's up to me to find the money. So.
Or find volunteers 3 times a year
It's all
to
bouncing around in my head.
yeah, you bet. You know, rather than once a year having a volunteer project, have a spring cleanup, you know, and then do one towards the end of the summer. You know, I don't know, there's just so many things that we could be doing. And yeah. Not that that's helped you at all, Liana. But that's what
Figure
you
it
get paid the big bucks
That's what
for.
some of them are there for.
What do you need from us tonight?
Right, yeah, $1 million. I think I've figured out what I need from you to make this budget work. And we'll,
Oh, and we need to make sure that we pay for all of the sewer lines too. Can we do that?
Yeah, that's my job,
so,
isn't it?
I
Is
mean,
that the committee?
So levy would lift to
Again,
the max.
super rough estimates, $15 million,
Oh, we just did that for a wastewater plant. Let's just do it again.
right? Ready to go. We got this.
Like water off a duck's back, you know?
Maybe we'll have this conversation after next fall.
There you go.
We have like a 2025 fall. Give us a year to recover.
Let's see if everybody's still here.
Right. So one thing that I wanted to point out as well, and it's in the plan or in the memo, was, so we've talked about undergrounding as a priority. It will come out of the street fund to create a plan, and that's $100,000. It's not in here. We've talked about, again, the extending sewer lines, and we're also almost wrapped up with our project, and we need another digester. We need upgrades to the digester at a minimum. That's the next project. So again, you know, like the sewer plan isn't done. We need to do it again because we're almost done with it all. And so a sewer plan is not in here, and that's about $80,000 out of the water sewer fund. One project that also is not in here is the Cascade Avenue utility upgrades. That one right now would be 100% funded by the Public Works Board loan. I have a debrief with them on Monday to see what options we have to see if we can get some sort of distressed qualification, because we didn't qualify. And I want to know how they calculate that, because I don't know how we aren't qualified as that. That being said, while it doesn't seem like it, the median income for our area has increased.
The price of pumps has increased dramatically.
And when they calculate a percentage, like for distressed, it's a percentage of the median income. So when that goes up,
Your chances go down.
then your chances go down. So that percentage goes down, and then you fall out of it, even though your utility rates are $100 a month just for sewer. Over that, it doesn't qualify anymore. So again, I want a bigger conversation with them. Worst case scenario, we forego this round and we apply again in the spring of next year. And try to get that distress. What distress does is it gives us a lower interest rate, and it gives us the ability to get grant funding. We didn't get the federal appropriations, but I'm kind of glad that we knew earlier, because no one's going to get it, I don't think, if the government can't pass a budget. You kind of like lose all your earmarks and you have to start again in the spring. So we could do that as well. We could try again in the spring at the federal and at the state level to see about getting some direct capital funds for that project. Again, trying to get grants to pay for this. But
Does the audit finding screw us for getting grants?
it may, some of them don't ask. So,
Okay.
but some do.
But if they ask, we're screwed.
But if they ask, we just have to explain ourselves.
Right.
It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, there's,
It's not a deal killer, but.
no, it's not you misappropriated all these funds.
Yeah. Right. If you didn't
You
have
haven't
somebody
balanced
sign a
your-
piece of paper.
I mean, it's better than, I mean, maybe not, I don't know, but we don't have a finding for our financial condition, which means we've been warned and we've seen a downward trend, and we're not addressing it
Right.
in any of our funds. So it just depends on the finding.
Okay.
I hope for this one, it's not a big deal.
And that's Thursday, the 5th.
No, I've been thinking about this. You've been talking about the median income is going up and what it does to our economics. We're going to going through an interesting transition because we do have distressed workers that can't find a place to rent, can't afford it, getting pushed out of town. But then on the other hand, it could have some weird spikes in our revenue too. So might get a little more, but it's not helping those that need it the most. I think we're going to see some interesting dynamics over the next couple of years as our demo changes.
Well, and if we continue to have to rely solely on tourism dollars, basically, just to be able to survive, we're,
Well, tourism as a whole is up,
yes.
which is good or bad. Because apparently we're Portland's playground and we should all come out here and pretend that this isn't actually a city that people live in. It's a place to come and play. Keep me going. But
So our budget's still in flux, and I haven't published the web version yet of our budget, but this is sort of part of it is we have the demographics. And so this is where we're at population wise. Took a hit in the crash.
Mhm.
Don't know what happened in 13, but anyway, this varies slightly from the state. We're at 1560 or 1565, I think. But again, we have a higher daytime population, being the government center for, or the central for the county seat, as well as a couple of schools. But you know, it talks about household analysis and where we're at for the state average. But this is sort of what I was talking about. Our median income is $66,000. And so when you look at a percentage of your, let's see, so like right now, the sewer bill, I don't know it off the top of my head, zero, no.
Sewer 100.
Sewer,
25.
100 and,
I don't say 19, but it might be
sewer
25.
only,
Yeah,
okay.
okay,
Yeah, it's one of those.
I'll do 119. Okay, so we're at 2% and of median income. So if you multiply that by 12, divided by median income, we're at about just over 2%. And the distressed is between 3 and 5%, and then over 5 is severely distressed. So I tried to say, well, but next year it's gonna get worse.
right.
Mhm.
So
You know, I'd be curious to know what the population density is of what Stevenson services, as opposed to just within the city limits. Because we pull in a lot more into the city than, you know, people do business and stuff here, they work here and everything else. Just wondered what that dynamic would be.
Is that daytime population?
Yep.
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, no, that's the, within the city limits. That's every man, woman, and child, right?
That's your daytime population. So people coming in during the workday
Or school.
But not sleeping.
or
here.
leaving, but not sleeping here. Yeah.
1,500?
No.
Lives here,
700.
27.
2,200.
That's
Oh,
seven.
okay. Oh, I see that.
6,700. Yeah. Mhm. So. Yeah. Mhm.
So it came up with all these. We're talking about budget at one of our meetings. And I was just gonna just make it work. No. We're gonna bring it to city council and the city council will help you make it work. So that's why we had this. Luckily, the timing shook out perfectly. Because fire district couldn't make tonight.
Yeah.
So this
Mhm.
worked great. It was a great exercise in how to balance the budget.
Okay. I guess one question, is debt okay for the equipment service fund? Is that something council is comfortable with? We've been paying
It's
cash
like
for
an
things.
Easier
so-
way to keep
Okay.
things balanced.
Okay.
That's why most people.
Yeah. And I think putting things off, something's gonna stop working altogether, and we're not gonna have it in the budget, and we're gonna have to just buy it or finance it then anyway. If we start spreading it out over coming years, stuff that just already we know doesn't work like it should.
On a household level, you finance a rig because you don't have that money sitting in your bank. If you do, good for you.
Mhm.
As a city, we don't have that money sitting in the bank. So
So, and trying to think outside the box. Is it equipment that is used all the time? If it's not equipment that's used all the time, is there a way to leverage the equipment from another entity, i.e. the county?
We already do that with a lot of different pieces of equipment.
What's that?
We already do that. Their
Okay, there you
roller,
go.
their crack
Okay.
sealer, yeah.
And
So-
now we have the
Their
option.
bigger excavator, their forklifts and stuff. Yeah.
Okay,
It's a
all right.
good question,
I
though.
Yeah, it's a great question.
yeah,
Unfortunately, when things like the sweeper, when they need it, we need it. We both need it at the same time. So that's one I don't know that we can get away, get away with, even though it's primarily used in the spring and fall.
So is that a loaner program or is there like an interagency agreement on the monies that change hands? Is it like
A little bit of both. Yeah.
So I know that
Depends
Clark
on the-
County is one of the few places that has a striper, right? So that's why they come and they
Mhm.
make money off of that. So they invest in that thing, but then they get to make money against it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have that. Does the back truck come into that realm of rarefied
Can
air?
they borrow it? Or can they,
Do they borrow it or do they pay for it?
they don't use it, or
Okay.
the county hasn't requested to use it. They haven't needed, they don't do a lot of that sort of like excavation. They don't really need to because they don't have their
Yeah.
utilities. It
They
would be
were-
PUD.
If anything, I can see in a pinch, North Bonneville.
there was one of their workers was out in front of the old jail. And he was trying to rotor-rooter the sewer. And I said, we've got an awesome vehicle that would do that and make it a whole, because, it was so gross. And he was down there with his hand gloves and, and the rotor-rooter machine and,
That's one thing that we kind of were tossing around a little bit the other day. And Anders pulled some rates to, kind of say when we get those calls from community members that say, hey, like, I'm backing up. I don't know why. Our response is like, okay, well, we can check our side, but you're gonna have to call someone to check your side. And so they end up spending, a couple thousand, $2,000 to $4,000 for someone to come out and like provide that service to jet their line. So we were kind of toying with like,
what would it
why-
cost?
why wouldn't
Yep.
we do that? We're there anyway. We're set up. Like, why
Exactly.
would we
Already
do
doing
that?
our side.
Liability.
Exactly. So that's where we landed on it.
And what was that?
Liability.
If we blow up their line,
Then we have to replace the line. that we
Wah,
blew up.
wah, wah.
yeah.
Or have them sign a liability waiver.
Then,
Nice.
then we're acting like plumbers and that's not what we are.
Well, the county,
I
the
think-
county,
I
the
know.
county is acting like they own a camping ground too. Wonder how the other campgrounds
We're
feel
all
about
thinking
that.
outside the box,
Yes.
because I guess is what it's come down. to.
There you go.
All right, anything else?
No, that was it.
Turn the